Hi, welcome back to Cheyenne Wyoming Urban Gardener, and I am just out here in the garden again. I've been out here in the garden all day today. Today is Saturday the 7th of August, and I'm out here just, well, doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So I'm doing a little bit of planting. I have planted some more radishes and planted or transplanted 7 lettuce plants that I had. I had planted a larger variety of a butter crunch lettuce, and decided to go ahead and really get it separated out into pretty much some distance between each of the plants, and have done a couple other things out here in the garden, just putting in some extra soil in some pots that I had, and trying to get these plants back as healthy as I can before getting those out into the ground. And that I'm referring to my raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries that I had earlier in the season, and they're already putting on some new growth. So I just wanted to get them back as healthy as I can before I get those set out. And I just wanted to go ahead and get a shot of this beautiful pot of pansies and violets and marigolds. Just absolutely gorgeous. And I don't really get a whole lot of shots of my flowers that I have, and this is just an old iron pot that is attached by chains to an old wagon wheel that is most likely from the person who built our old Victorian mansion way back in 1883. So this probably belonged to William Sturgis. William Sturgis is the builder of the house. So someone had made it into a flower pot and put it on those chains and everything, and attached it to this wagon wheel rim. I actually found it when I moved here. It was kind of pushed off to the side and had a bunch of weeds covering it, and I cleaned it off and really just liked how unique that it was, and I've been using it ever since. So this wagon wheel is well over 100 years old, and I just absolutely love the little pot, so it has a great place for me to put some of my flowers. And this is over here with the big pumpkin plants, with that large pumpkin in there, and we does have a couple more set on it. I checked on that. It was a little bit later in the evening when I did the last video, and I couldn't really see. And it does have a couple more little pumpkins set on it, so looking forward to seeing those when they start getting a little bit bigger. And I want to update you on a couple of things that I planted in the garden, and show you a couple of things that I planted a few days ago that are already up. So 3 days ago I had done a video and went ahead and uploaded it, and I had planted at that time some more lettuce, and as you can see, all of that lettuce is up in a row right through here. I'm going to have to move that squash plant leaf out of the way. But we have a whole row of lettuce right there. And I also have some of my sage coming up already, although they're really, really tiny, kind of hard to see them, because I have planted some sage in here as well. There's one, kind of hard to see, but it's right in the center. And a couple of more through there, and they'll be working their way up over the next few days. But anyway, those lettuce seeds that came up, this is just a gourmet blend of all types of different lettuces. So we have those coming up rather thickly. I did go ahead and plant those a little bit thicker than I did the last ones. And I did work to get rid of the ants. So none of the ants are in there right now. And I did work a little bit with my Swiss chard, because I noticed my Swiss chard had been affected by some of the wind and things that were going on. So tried to work with it a little bit. I'm not real good about Swiss chard. It was my first time trying to grow it. Because I'm not a fan of it. I think it's a little bitter, but we'll see if it comes on and actually does anything. And looks like a couple of the cabbages are getting some leaves munched on, so I'm going to have to check on that and see if our little white cabbage moth friends are the culprits of that, or if it might be some yellow jackets. So you can see one kind of buzzing around over there. I've had some issues with some yellow jackets that have started coming in, and they do bite the leaves on the plants because they're looking for water, so that might be the actual culprit of that. Because I'm not really seeing any damage on these cabbage plants here. nor over here. So looks like to me it might be the actual yellow jackets. So anyway, that's the update on those seeds, and that is the lettuce seeds. Now yesterday on the 6th, I had a pretty devastating thing that happened out here in the garden, and that is, if you notice, I have some missing yellow straight neck squash plants, and that was because we got wind here yesterday at about 80 miles per hour, and the yellow straight neck squash, even though they were really tightly packed in this little row, were not packed tight enough that the wind couldn't get to them. So it actually broke 3 of my large yellow straight neck squash plants. I was really frustrated, but that's how it happens. That's life. And even the one in the back is bent a little bit, but it's not broken. So I'm just going to hope that it perks back up. I may get in here and try to put some more soil around it and get it to stand up a little bit straighter. But it did get 3 of my straight neck squash plants, and I had to go ahead and just pull them out of the ground and give them a toss because they were done for. Anyway, I did go ahead and pull my giant Marconi pepper off of my plants, and my daughter went ahead and ate it. We saved the seed, and she was amazed that it tasted just like just a regular bell pepper. And then we have loads of bell peppers, if you can see them there, that are coming on these plants. In fact, they've got some more giant Marconi that have set on the plants, and then even the plants that I had put out here from the seed that I had saved from a store-bought bell pepper are blooming and having some peppers on them as well. You can kind of see them right there in the back. And then another giant Marconi plant there in the very, very back. That one has several on it that are coming on. So it looks like it's going to be a good pepper year. And I did have one of my zucchini here in this row that was bent over from the wind. That one right there, but it does look like that it's going to go ahead and pull out of it. It wasn't broken or anything, so I'll be watching it for the next couple of days. And then I do have a yellow straight neck squash in this row that kind of got mixed in somehow, and it's setting some more straight neck squash on it. You can kind of see it right there in the middle of the shots, and hopefully it won't have any issues and just come on. It didn't have any issues with it as far as wind, nor any of these up here in the front, so maybe they were a little bit more protected, probably by the sunflower. And even though the wind was 80 miles per hour, you can see the sunflowers didn't have any problem with it. They are just fine, getting really tall now. They're way over my head, probably pushing about 8 feet tall at this point. And I did have one over here bloom, even though it was short. So that one has bloomed, and it's about, I'd say about 5 feet tall, but the other ones are about 6 feet and getting taller by the day. And then we do have a really short one right here. It was a group of 4. And this one looks like it's going to bloom soon. You can kind of see a little bloom starting there. But this is a beautiful little bloom. It's just a shorter sunflower, and sometimes that happens. Just a little gorgeous sunflower. But anyway, that is the update on some tragic news that I had happen with some squash plants last night. And these are the 3 Sun Sugar Gold tomatoes, the little cherry tomatoes. Finally, I get that out right. And they are blooming, and I have a couple of tomatoes set on them already, even though the plants are really, really short. These were the final 3 tomatoes that I had just extras of, and I kind of just set them out here in pots for a long time, and then I went ahead and got them planted, and I did go ahead and get them staked today, and noticed that they had a couple of tomatoes on them, so I've been really careful with them, just to see that I make sure that I get some of those tomatoes, because I have not tried those before, to be honest. And I do have another plant that's a lot older and has a lot more on it, but of course I want all of them that I can get, you know. So that is the Sun Sugar Gold, and those 3 extra plants are doing great. And then I had a random squash came up, and I believe this is going to be probably a dark green zucchini, because I had planted those through here before I went in and put the sun sugar tomatoes in, because I didn't have a whole lot of germination on my dark green zucchini in the beginning, and I had made this into a row and it didn't seem that it was doing any good as well, so I had removed anything that had sprouted, because they just weren't doing anything, and had cleared this out to make the row for the tomatoes. And that one ended up coming up anyway. It looks pretty, so I think I'll just leave it there and see if it actually does anything. And then I did have some cucumbers that were tucked in between my tomato plants, and there was only a couple of them that came up, and this one is starting to get runners on it and setting cucumbers. And it may be the only cucumbers that I end up really getting that many of, because it's just a beautiful little plant, and it's very short right now, but it's really looking healthy and set a good runner and getting some little cucumbers on it. And there's one right here as well that is a white cucumber, and it's starting to get runners on it as well. So who knows, I may end up getting the best cucumbers out of the two small plants. And then I have one kind of tucked away in between a couple more of my tomatoes in the back that is also starting to get runners on it. Let me see if I can zoom in on it. There we go. So there it is, and we'll see. Maybe it'll do something as well. But you can kind of see my red curry squash in there. They don't turn red until it gets later in the season, and there's one hanging right there, pretty large. And they're all throughout. There's just a mass of vines in there. They've climbed some of the tomato cages and starting to just really get some size on them. And then I've got my acorn squash. The first year I've ever had acorn squash that have runners on them as long as they have. Usually they bush more than they do with big runners, but you can see there in the back with that one, it is definitely getting runners on it. And then I have runners on my white acorn squash, so you can see that are spilling out into the yard right there. And they do have some white acorn squash on them, so pretty interesting. And here is the other side of the red curries. As you can see, they're just a tangled mess in there, but you can see little squash just about everywhere if you're kind of looking around. Definitely in there. And I do have my acorn squash over here that are definitely touching my red curry, so hopefully they don't cross. But I do see an acorn squash peeking in right there. If you look in the center of the screen, you can see their acorn squash there. It's so hard to come out here to the garden and not do some sort of an update, because so many things change from day to day. And there's another red curry squash right there. You just, sometimes I'm surprised. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't see that one there, and there it is. So anyway, that is my daughter and my grandson coming back with some tacos. We went ahead and got tacos tonight. And usually I would make them, but I'm just really tired from being in the garden all day today. The tomatillos are just going crazy, and I've been reporting on those in my videos. And you can see tomatillos are going to be a thing. And I have never grown them before, so I am surprised that they are doing so well. There are only 3 plants, but there are tomatillos everywhere in here. There's just kind of craziness. So I am happy about them. I'm not really a big fan of salsa verde, so I'm going to try to see if there's something else that I can do with the tomatillos besides just the salsa verde. But beautiful plants, lots of stuff going on. This one doesn't have as many as the other 2, and I think it's just because the plant is just growing so darn large that I'm sure it's going to start setting. It has a few on it, but not like a huge amount like these other ones. These other ones are just shocking me with how big they are and just so full of stuff. And it looks like my cucumbers are going to end up doing something. They're blooming like crazy, and I have noticed that there are some cucumbers on them, little bitty ones, but definitely are doing some stuff in here, getting some cucumbers going. Especially out of some of the other ones, not particularly the straight 8 that was left behind, and that's the tallest one you can see, because it was the only one left after the hailstorm. And it had tried to make some cucumbers, but I think it was just so damaged I'll show you the base of the plant and you can see how damaged that it is. And that is the root that goes into the ground, and you can see that it was cracked and just in really bad shape, but still was trying to grow. And I left it to see if it would do anything, and I've been amazed that it's just made a plant. And it got up to all the way to the top of the trellis and is just still continuing to go. And then of course I have the poinsettia, white spine cucumbers, and burpless cucumbers that are all in here as well, and I did not separate them. I just wanted some cucumbers. I didn't care if they crossed or not. So anyway, they're in here, and the vines look beautiful. They've really started putting on some growth in the last few days. Last couple weeks, to be honest. This one has grown up into the tomato cage for the beefsteak tomatoes, which I do have some really nice big beefsteak tomatoes that are set on these plants, even though they look terrible. But they are still putting on a lot of tomatoes. So I look forward to those. The cucumbers look like they're going to pull out and do something finally. And even getting some runners now on those noodle beans. Went ahead and wrapped one of them, as you can see here, up around the pipe that I have. This is an old bed frame that I had found and made a trellis out of it, and then I extended it with some larger trellises. But we have the Blue Lake pole beans here, and then we have those noodle beans there, and they are putting on runners. So maybe they'll actually do something, who knows. I just hope that I get beans. That's all I'm happy about, and I do have beans hanging in here that I am going to be looking forward to. So you can see some beans in there, lots of blooms all going on. So like, again, it's really hard to come in here to the garden and not give an update on things, especially when I was a little worried about what was going to actually produce something. But anyway, that is an update on what's going on right now. I'm going to do another little short video with a part 2, because I noticed that my video had cut off in the last one and I had to go into part 2 without really giving an introduction, and I do apologize about that because I normally try to do that. And so we're going to go into a part 2.